Thanks, Matt, and hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I can see a few familiar names in the chat, so that's always good to see. So, for those of you that don't know, AgriWebb is a livestock management software that's focused on the holistic data collection of your farm. So, we cover everything from livestock management, paddock management, and business and team management. So, making sure that everything you need to make decisions on your farm is all held in your hand on your phone. So if we just go to the next slide, zooming in to the livestock side of things, we also offer some really great like weight insights and analysis, fertility reporting, cost of production reporting, gross margins, lifetime performance, and paddock grazing intensity. So we offer not only, or we allow you not only to record your data, but also give you back really great insights and information to make decisions. Just zooming in a little bit on the next slide, grazing in AgriWebb, not only are we holistic in the sense that we try and cover every record for every different part of your farm, we also try to be there for every stage of what you're doing. So we're there when you're planning your grazing and rotations, what allow you to manage on the go again on that mobile app, just allow you to be super flexible and make decisions on the fly as you go about your day to day. And then we collate all that information for you automatically and allow you to either monitor the performance and share it around with your team. So on the next slide, as you can see, this can be boiled down into specific records. So we can cover different animal unit settings. So whether you work in DSE or you're up in Queensland and you prefer to work in LSU, we have all your pasture metrics in the app, but we also work with amazing partners like Cibo Labs to start to bring that in for you automatically, as well as other partners like FarmBot and Farmo with water management. Continuing on to the management things, where you're able to record your day-to-day activities in AgriWebb. So that's your animal moves. You can see visually how your paddocks and the whole farm are performing, as well as tracking your grazing days. And as you'll see as we go through the presentation today, your real-time food updates with Cibo Labs. And then lastly, the last step is we always want to make sure you're able to analyze that data that you're putting in every day. So you can review your moves, you can have a look at your paddock grazing load historically to start to plan out, how the paddocks performed and maybe where you might use your rotations in the next season, as well as many other great things to help you analyze your data. And we love hearing from customers. It's one of my favorite things. So we have this lovely quote from Claire that I just want to leave you with, all about how she has found grazing in AgriWebb as well. Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, Isabel. And agreed. Yeah, the whole point of AgriWebb is not just to help you in that real time, but how are you planning, how are you managing in the real time, but then also how are you analyzing? So a great overview, Isabel. Appreciate that. Alistair, I'll hand it over to you for Foundations of Cibo Labs then.
Great. Thanks very much, Matt. It's great to be here. It's terrific to see so many names that we recognise, and I'm glad that you're able to come along this afternoon. For those of you who haven't had a chance to, I guess, come across what Cibo does, we're really in the basis of providing you with the data to help you be more efficient in your livestock production. And as livestock managers, we know that starts with being able to ensure that all classes of stock get their daily intake requirements every day, and that you can plan around that and you know what that is. Our business is helping you have the confidence in doing that with the amount of pasture that you've got, and understand exactly what you have currently, as well as the future demands that you might have in terms of planning and production outcomes down the track. A really key part of being able to do that is being able to be accurate, to be objective, and be repeatable in your assessments. And we know that that's a very time-consuming task. If you're out cutting pastures and assessing them, it is a time-consuming task. People don't do it as regularly as they need to do, but they also don't get, I guess, the variation that occurs across their landscape. Having satellite imagery allows us to give you that confidence, because we actually can see everything that occurs across your property. And so our imagery combined with our field calibration that we've been doing over the last 6 years, we're now up to about 7,500 sites across the country. Those two combined give us a very powerful data set that you can use in great confidence in terms of understanding your forage mass and to move forward. If we look at our next slide, please, Matt, if you can. A key part of what we do in terms of, I guess, the data we provide is to help you understand the variation that occurs across your grazing environment. So we don't just provide you with the amount of feed that is on offer per paddock. And while we certainly do that, and that drives into our integration with AgriWebb, more importantly, what we're trying to show you is the variation that occurs across your property and within your paddocks. So that if we look at this example here, you'll see that there's various shades going from a bright green through to the darker colors and then back down to those amber and red colors. And across a paddock, what we see in each of those is a 10 square meter resolution. There's huge variation there. So we're helping you understand that. And more importantly, when you're looking to move forward, you want to exploit the variation that exists within your paddocks, and we can help you understand that. When we look at our next, I guess, what we do in terms of what we provide you, it's not just that we're providing you with the food on offer. And while that's essential to your feed-based planning and to your forage budgets, what we also want you to understand, I guess, is the other things that you can do tactically across your property. So we can give you things like an imagery about what's actually physically growing at the moment versus what's dead standing feed, which can help you understand whether you're putting the right stock classes into that environment, whether you need to think about a supplementary feeding program, what ongoing pasture management decisions you might want to make across your property. We can do that for ground cover, we can do that for woody cover. So then if we go to just, I guess, our last wrap-up slide, we also offer a range of other services. We are now providing with MLA, and it is now free to everybody, not just to MLA members. That's a new development that we're happy to announce now. The Australian Feed-Based Monitor, which you use in conjunction with your pasture key service to understand those broader trends across your properties, to help you understand how your production curves are actually aligning with your pasture growth curves. And then we can also help you generate benchmarking reports that you might want to use in terms of forage budgets, in terms of forage growth over time, your woody cover and your ground cover changes, or maybe your forest carbon reports. So there is quite a lot of information that we can use to help you make objective data. And we're really happy that we can then start to provide that data into integrations such as AgriWebb. So back to you, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, Alistair. A lot of really good stuff there. And I think that too is just, I think some folks have thought of Cibo Labs as one thing, but just the breadth of all the solutions that you provide is really awesome. We'll go to this next slide, which, Isabel, I'm going to toss it back to you. But again, the reason for this presentation is the partnership that we have together. And it's the fact that AgriWebb and Cibo Labs actually speak really well with one another through the integration. So we wanted to give a brief overview of what this actually looks like on one slide.
Yeah, and I really love what Alistair mentioned before about efficiency and confidence. I think that's also very important to AgriWebb. That's why we love to partner with companies like Cibo Labs. And so what we get from them is your total standing dry matter for your paddock. You're then able to enter a utilization rate, so you can customize how well your paddocks are being utilized depending on feed quality, feed type, trampling, that sort of thing. We then take that total standing dry matter and utilization, and we work out your feed on offer for you, which we then can visualize in our insights, as you can see on the right-hand side. So you can have a look on your phone at your whole farm and understand what areas of the farm need to be rested or what could be good for the next round of rotations. But not only that, it starts to provide us with grazing days. So based on the data that Cibo sends us every 5 days, we can start to recommend how often animals, based on their stock unit, should be grazing those paddocks for. So I think it's important to note, I think neither Cibo Labs or AgriWebb is trying to tell you how to farm. We're just there to save you time, give you a bit more confidence so that when you're out in the paddock and you want to, ground truth where you should move your animals to next, you have that data there to make sure that you feel really confident in the decisions you're making. Thanks, Matt.
Fantastic. I might call an audible really quickly. I see we had a question around what type of satellite imagery are you using to monitor vegetation, and what are the limitations to interpreting that data? I figure this might actually be a good point for us to cover that question. Alistair, I might lob it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Matt. So the data that we access, it's publicly available data. Anyone can actually purchase it if you're prepared to do it and interpret it. We purchase our data from the Sentinel-2 satellites that come out of Europe, and the data is then used through a series of algorithms that our research and development team have put together. So that's combined with the the pasture calibration data that we collect, and that we have been collecting over the last 8 years across Australia. And so those two levels of information that we use are then combined to predict the total standing dry matter that's actually on offer within a paddock. I see, Matt, there was another question there, which if I can, just as I go in terms of Rhonda's question about the variation of paddocks. And I think this is an important thing just as we look at this integration. What Cibo provides through to you in your AgriWebb integration is the total standing dry matter, or the which is the average for the paddock that we're actually looking at. So you get the average TSDM across each paddock that you have, and that's part of your pasture key service. Importantly, but I guess when you're looking at your AgriWebb information, is that you're working on the average of the paddock. If you really want to see the variation that is occurring within that paddock, you actually need to look at the maps that we provide you that is part of your pasture key subscription, and you will see that variation within your paddocks, and that's at a 10 square meter resolution. When you actually then wanted to look, I guess, on a broader level resolution, the AFM, which is the free version, works on a 1 hectare basis, and it's a bit broader. So if you've combined the two, Rhonda, you've already got pasture key, and you'll see within paddock variation. If you haven't got that integration yet and you're working on the AFM, then you won't be using it with AgriWebb, and so you'll only have whole property data rather than paddock data. Back to you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions, so keep them coming, because we definitely want to fill up that Q&A time. For the sake of time, that we will keep going, but obviously we will stop. So I mentioned this next section is really going to be around, right? We've found or learned more about how AgriWebb and Cibo Labs are equipping you with specific data points to make more data-driven grazing decisions. We think it's really helpful, though, right, to think of, okay, what are real-world scenarios that you all are living day in and day out? So we will cover 3 specific scenarios. One's really focused to planning, one's focused on that in-paddock real-time decision-making, and that last one, like we mentioned, is all about analysis. So feel free, if there are questions that you have for a specific scenario, feel free to put them in the Q&A section as well, and we might answer 1 or 2 and save the rest for Q&A. But Isabel, I'm going to lob it over to you if you want to set the stage for this first scenario around forage budgeting.
Yeah, so the first scenario we have is forage budgeting for the future. So as many people experienced probably a couple months ago, depending on where you are in Australia, your calves are going to drop in the spring, and I'm going to need my pastures to support the growth of my calves throughout summer. So a few things to consider is what forage is available, what's the weather conditions, will I have enough grass to support my stocking load, either per paddock versus the entire farm. What paddock can I go to next, and what supplementary feed is available, and how much should I budget? So these are a few things that you need to be thinking about, but what makes it excellent with the AgriWebb by itself, but also the AgriWebb and Cibo integration, is that a lot of this data can be inputted on the day-to-day on your phone. So if we're thinking about making sure we're planning and setting up ready to start to analyze some of this grazing data, we want to be making sure that our animal unit settings are correct, which is whether you want to work in DSE and LSU, but more importantly that you're recording these settings in, or these units in AgriWebb. So what that means is you will see on each mob, you can also do it in bulk, you can update the animal units of specific mobs or individuals. So for example, something that we recommend is for your lactating animals. So what they would be in this scenario, your cows, you'd want to increase their DSE to make sure you're accurately representing how much feed they're going to be consuming, and therefore making sure that if you go to move them into a new paddock, or if you're trying to assess how long they can stay in that current paddock, AgriWebb can give you the right information from that. So that's where the making sure the animal units are correct. We can then use the feed on offer that we derive from Cibo Labs total standing dry matter to understand, how long they can stay in the current paddock, but also how much feed they're going to need over these summer months. With the water management side of things, something we have with quite a few partners is allowing them to automatically send over their rainfall records. So you don't have to manually put that in for some of our integrations, or there is a manual rainfall record that you can put in. This really helps to understand what happened, this year, to start to work, or even last year, over summer, to understand what it's going to look like this year. So, for example, we have a report that I'm going to go through later that gives you your DSE load per hectare per 100 mils of rain. So you can start to see how paddocks are bouncing back and how they perform throughout the year for those stock classes.
Al, if you want
hand it
to
over to
chat
you,
through the
Al.
Cibo Labs
Sorry, I
stuff,
was
yeah.
reading a question.
Sorry, that's okay. There was a couple of questions there. Did you want to deal with those, Isabel, that were specific on that scenario, and then we can come on onto the next one? Yeah.
Yes, so I just saw Nicolette in the chat. So definitely reach out to our support team for the specific instructions. But yes, you should be able to search for an age class filter, and that way you're able to select the animals in bulk to update their DSE as well. So definitely reach out to our support team for the specific instructions, but short answer is yes, you can allocate each class. John, I think that is also a great idea to automatically update DSEs. I think that's something we're working on.
There was another question Gary had asked this around, can you please confirm the level of on-farm input required to ensure farm-specific calibration works hand in hand with the satellite information provided by Cibo? I didn't know if this was also falling into that as well.
So from AgriWebb side, you are able to manually enter your feed on offer that you're collecting out in the paddock. That's all the sort of on-farm input we would require if you do have the integration. But also I think, Al, I might hand it over to you about maybe the calibration of Cibo.
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. I'm going to park that and come back to that, because I think that I'll sort of come back into that, if you like, as we go through maybe understanding this image that you have in front of you. So this is a typical pasture key image that we provide. Now, the difference between our Australian feed-based monitor and our pasture key, as I said before, is really about the resolution and the level of detail that we provide within the service. So as a free service with the Australian feed-based monitor, we work on a per hectare basis, and we provide that detail for the land parcels that are associated with your property. So it's basically the whole of your property. That doesn't get integrated with your AgriWebb subscription. That's just a service that you can have running at any point in time, and to look at those broader trends across your actual property and look at the variation that occurs within the land parcels associated with your property. If you then go to subscribe to Pasture Key and you integrate that with AgriWebb, What that allows you to do is have this detail that we're providing, which is that paddock history and that paddock detail that we're using as part of that integration that Isabel's just shown you in terms of understanding where you might move stock to, or developing, I guess, a stocking history associated with your paddock history. What we're providing to you then is a series of layers. And the first layer is based on the total standing dry matter. It is updated every 5 days, and we calculate the food on offer over a 15-day rolling average, which allows us to account for days where the satellite might be obscured by clouds, so that we get a couple of passes as well as in that time period to provide you with the most accurate reflection of what there actually is within your paddock. That detail, and you'll see when we look at this image, is down to a 10 square meter resolution. So that shows us then this variation that occurs across those individual paddocks. That data is sitting within your Cibo Labs dashboard. So if you're an AgriWebb customer and you have pasture key, but you've never actually opened it up, one of the first things to do is to actually go into your Cibo Labs data. Open your maps up and you'll see firstly this image, but you can also see a series of other images, such as a layer which is fractional cover, which shows the growth and the level of growth and photosynthetic activity that's occurring across your property. You can look at ground cover and those variations in ground cover on that 10 square meter resolution. Now, I see that there was an earlier question about wanting to develop a report for whole of farm information and whole of farm data. We actually provide that data within your pasture key access files that are sitting within your service within the Cibo system. So you can access your data, you can download your data, you can use it to calibrate or to calculate your own forage budgets if you want, using an Excel template or your own template. And again, obviously, the integration with AgriWebb means that you can do this more frequently and easily from the one app. But if you want more detail and a lot more data, you can dive into that within the Cibo system. In terms then of if you wanted to calibrate what we're providing you with, what you see on ground, you can certainly do that. We'd encourage you to download. We have an app which is called Survey 123. It's our collector app. We use that where we require producers to actually go and actually use the app in a transect where they take between 5 and 10 assessments over a transect across their paddock to pick up the variation that might be occurring within that paddock. And obviously, we'd encourage you to try and do a cutting and a weighing and a drying process to make sure that what you're actually recording is what is actually there on the ground. One of the things we often find is that producers are very used to doing assessments, but their calibrations are often based on a small part of their paddock. You'll see if we look at this example again, there's huge variation within some of these paddocks. And that's not always picked up when people are doing their visual estimates or their traditional pasture assessments. There can be areas that you haven't really assessed as effectively as you should do. And that can throw your calibrations or your visual estimates out a fair bit. So the satellite, because it looks directly onto the ground, will pick up that variation much more effectively. Okay, so Matt, I'm happy to go to the next slide if you like.
Perfect. Isabel, if you'd like to kick off this scenario.
Yes, so moving on to scenario 2, which is making real-time decisions with data. So I'm 3 to 4 weeks out from my contract deadline, and I need to know how many cross-fed steers will reach the weight target. So some things to consider are: how are my pastures performing? What are the animal weights and ADG? Which animals should be drafted where? And which of my animals will hit target weight? So if we go to the next slide. So as I said earlier, AgriWebb is a livestock management software that is holistic in allowing you to not only obviously manage your grazing, but also the livestock performance. So whether it's at an individual level or mob level, you'll be able to either have your ADGs created automatically for you based on the weights that you're putting in, or you can also manually enter your assumed average daily gain and your actual average daily gain if you're, got a mob product and if you're weighing them and you didn't do it live, you can enter in the ADG off your weigh scale, for example, just to make sure that data is more accurate, so you can start to understand what the animal's projected weight would be, and you can start to understand what sort of growth curve they're on to make sure that the paddock you currently have them in, or looking to move them into, will help continue that growth curve to where it needs to get ready for your contract date. So once again, I think the making real-time decisions on the go is something we're very passionate about at AgriWebb. So both the ADG and, as you saw, your feed on offer can be seen on the mobile app. So if you see on the right hand side, it colors out the paddocks that I have on my demo farm of the feed on offer of current paddocks. So for example, there's like 185 steers up in the top left-hand corner. If I was looking to move them to a new paddock, I would look to move them to one of the darker green paddocks, because that's more likely to have more feed. Therefore, it's going to continue with them on that growth curve to make sure that they're going to hit that contract deadline, for example. Next slide. I think I'm handing over to Alistair now. Oh no, I'm not. I think.
Do we want to dive into some questions, or Al, anything, on your end?
Yeah.
You'd like to add?
No, look, at this point, there's a couple of questions that I might just touch on, that not necessarily tying back into your average daily growth and your feed on offer. But remember that feed on offer is a calculation based on a couple of things. It's based on the total standing dry matter that you have, and then it's then considering what you want to actually use within your budget down to your residual level. And in terms of when we're providing feed on offer to you as a Cibo service, we're also looking at, I guess, those areas that are not actually grazable. So our feed on offer is a calculation of total standing dry matter by that grazable area. So we can provide you with that level of data. Again, you have to dive into your data files to pull out that if you like, that very specific high level information. What we put through into our AgriWebb integration allows you to make these feed budgets on your app when you're actually within a paddock or before you go out during the day, to give you that guidance to make those decisions. Terry Mann had a question about if you're moving paddocks every 7 days, but we're providing 15-day rolling average. That's right. We do provide you with a 15-day rolling average, Terry, but you have the capacity within the Cibo service to go back into your data file. We provide that satellite data every 5 days. So you can go back in and see the most recent satellite information for your paddocks within your data file. If you want the FU, which is the 15-day rolling average, you can also find that. But if you want the individual paddocks, you can pull that out. Just remember that there may be days where those paddocks might be obscured by cloud, and you might not get the full, if you like, a full 100% reading for that entire paddock, which could mean that there's a little bit of variation within the program. Effectively, what that means is you need to have confidence in your budgets and to actually start to do this assessments as part of that ongoing process of looking at your data. So Shannon's question about appropriate for dairy farmers moving daily. Again, Shannon, you're probably not going to find that you get these daily updates, but if you're looking at a pasture budget that's actually set with confidence, and you know the intake of your livestock, you're expecting that livestock to consume a certain amount each day, you make those decisions and move, the satellite information will start to reflect what has been in what is in the paddocks in front of you, and give you that confidence to set your feed budget so that those dairy cows are going on to fresh feed every day, and you know how much is actually there before they go on, which can then, I guess, influence your decision about the size of the grazing area that you allow for those milk cows each morning. So that they might be a couple of questions I think that we can roll on with, Matt, if you're happy.
I'm very, very happy. I was curious, maybe just, you did touch on cloud cover, and I know Tim had asked that earlier. If you don't mind tackling that one too in this one, that would be great.
Yeah, so cloud cover is an ongoing issue for us, particularly the further south that you go. Obviously, if the satellite can see the ground, we can provide a reading for you. But where there is issues where cloud has obscured the ground, obviously we can't provide information for you. That's I guess really why we work on this 15-day rolling average, where we're starting to actually look at the recordings over those last periods of time. What we are hoping is within that 2-week period, there will be at least 3 chances where the satellite will have been able to see the ground and provide a reading and some data that we can use within our updates to you.
Fantastic. Great response. We'll keep things moving. Isabel, I'll let you take the last one.
Yes, the last scenario. So at this point, we've executed our grazing plan and want to assess how our paddocks perform so we can begin planning future grazing movements. So things to consider: which pastures, oh God, can't speak already. Which pastures were rested and available for your next rotation? Which pastures have bounced back based on stocking rate and grazing percentage? What were the paddocks like last year? What did the current season look like? And what was the overall performance of livestock in relation to the paddocks they were in? And I'm going to give it to Alistair first off.
Okay, thank you. So there's a couple of things. This is an interesting map to show, and it does often startle people, I guess. But what we're really looking at here is this concept of what we call fractional cover. So depending on the size of your screen, it might be a little bit hard to look at, but what we're seeing again on 10 square meter resolution is that, I guess, degree of photosynthetic activity that is occurring across the property. So those areas that are bright green, what we're seeing are those areas that are highly active. So we're seeing fresh green growth basically coming through, very active growth within the vegetation that is existing in those paddocks. As we move into the bluer and the purpler mixes, what we're seeing is really that transition from active and highly active growth and high levels of photosynthetic activity to senescence and dead material. And so what we see then is in those areas that are blue and purple, what we have is areas of dead standing feed that are mixed in across that paddock. When we start to get to those redder areas, what we're really looking at is basically relative to this property. So it's not a reflection of the entire district or the region, but is relative within that property, is that mix of material that is actually dead or is less dense. So we're starting to get more, I guess, sparseness between the plants. We're starting to see a little bit more openness and a little bit more bare areas occurring through there. So again, what we look at when we look at a map like this is, firstly, we've got a sense of where we've got high levels of total standing dry matter. When we look at our fractional cover, what we can really start to look at and go, is that high level of TSDM, is that being driven by dead standing feed? And if that's, purple or that blue color, we know that that big bulk of feed is dead. And effectively, then it's not a paddock you put your high production stock on, or it would be a paddock that might be appropriate to use a supplementary feed with. Alternatively, you might have very high green levels. Say if we look at this paddock up in that top end of the property, bright green. When we look at our TSDM levels, it's also very low. And you might then think, okay, well, it's a short green feed. It might be suitable for sheep. Or if we're looking to put cattle on that, what other supplements need to be provided to ensure that we get our appropriate daily intake and achieve that. So we start to use these different layers so that we have a much more informed decision process and refine our feed budgets more effectively. And these are the nuances that you can access within your file. Matt.
Awesome. I'll lob it over to you, Isabel, if you'd like to talk on the AgriWebb side.
Yeah, so on the AgriWebb side, not only do we have those visualizations on the map that you would have seen throughout a few of those slides, but we have a few actual more stock standard reports that get populated by the activity that you're doing in AgriWebb. So one of those is our DSE load by paddock report. So this shows you your stocking rate at your animal units, whether that's DSE or LSU per hectare. It also allows you to look at your stocking rate per DSE per hectare per 100 mils of rain for the last 12 months and the cumulative stocking load. So what this report aims to show farmers, it can help you understand the production capability of your specific paddocks. So you can see their closing and opening stocking rate for a certain time period, and you can start to see how well the animals performed in those paddocks. Or, for example, were they relatively low stocked, but they still didn't perform very well? So maybe they're a contender for some pasture improvement. Again, it helps with that, just matching your feed availability to your stocking rate. So understanding that, maybe in spring you may not have as much feed that you would have liked. So it's just understanding what paddocks have been rested or could be used instead, or whether it's time to improve those pastures or do some supplementary feeding. If we head on to the next report, we also have our AgriWebb grazing chart. So this is part of our rotational planner add-on. And so again, as you're doing your rotations, it starts to fill out and visualize how many total days the paddocks were grazed for and rested in a specific time frame. So that could be per month, financial year, or more popular is like a rolling 12 months. So this just allows you to visualize and understand how often paddocks are being used and rested, and so it can start to help you plan out, what areas of the farm you may rest again next year for calving or lambing, and see how long they were grazed for as well. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, too good. There was a question, and I know there was a bit of talk around report generation, and then somebody had actually asked, and Isabel, maybe this one's for you, but obviously, Alistair, feel free to dive in. Josh had asked the question, is there a conversion from total standing dry matter to stock days per hectare for us Queenslanders? So we'll lob it over to you both.
In AgriWebb, we don't have that conversion, but that's something we're working on. Hopefully in potentially our next round of grazing, that might be something we include, but it's definitely on our radar and something we're looking at improving AgriWebb with.
Anything?
Back to you,
I saw you go off mute, Al, so I don't know. You're welcome to pass if not.
Well, look, I guess the important thing to remember for us within the Cibo data that we provide, we're providing data on a national basis, and certainly for Queensland, where we have quite a lot of users, the data we're providing is then up to you as to how you want to use it. So there are people who like to work in DSEs, there are people who like to use LSUs, and there are people who like to use adult equivalents. The reality is what we're providing you with is objective data that starts your feed budgeting process. So when you're within AgriWebb, you're using the system that AgriWebb provides, and whether that's AEs or LSUs or DSEs, that's your decision. If you're using our data within a template that we provide, which is basically an Excel template, we help you do the calculation so it's an adult equivalent, which then allows you to work out how many adult equivalents you'll carry for a certain period of time for a specific paddock based on the information that we have. That's in essence what we do. The farm software, if you like, we're not a farm software company. That's why we partner with AgriWebb. We provide data. We provide satellite data that helps you make your informed decisions around your grazing. And so if you're looking to do those calculations, then you need to probably think about the program that you're using, knowing that the data we provided with is there to start that process from an accurate footing.
Perfect.
Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, great response. So for the Q&A, I might stop sharing my screen so everybody can see your faces, but we'll start at the top then, and we'll work our way down. I know we might have touched on bits and pieces of these, but definitely want to make sure everyone feels like they've got their answer. So we'll actually start with Andrew Smith's question. What is the uncertainty in the total standing biomass for temperate systems? Does this vary seasonally?
Thanks, Andrew. So again, what we're looking at is that we've done a lot of calibrations with our models. We test it out frequently, and we have a lot of projects that we're involved in. We know that within temperate pastures, we are within 250 to 300 kilos of dry matter within what is actually within the paddock. So our accuracy is pretty high. I can't get, when I teach people pro-graze and pasture assessments, I can't get them that close. So I'm very happy to see that level of accuracy that we have within our system. Obviously, there are times within the season where occasionally it will be greater than that, and that's often when we've got a few issues that might be around some of our species, like very thick ryegrasses or fescues or something like that. But that's also something we've been resolving over the last few months as we've been taking more on-field calibrations. So the accuracies are pretty high and working very well in those temperate areas.
Fantastic.
Matt.
All right, we'll go to the next one then. Ian asked, so technically I need to know feed availability, so feed on offer, not total biomass. The SIBO numbers appear to be total biomass and overwrite my feed on offer estimates. Am I using the wrong definition of feed on offer?
I reckon that's an AgriWebb one,
Might be
because
an
that's
agri question.
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah,
of
I
our
might just jump in, Ian. If you are using AgriWebb with the Cibo Labs integration, what you should be doing is instead of, I guess, rewriting and doing another foo record, every time you get a total standing dry matter reading, is you can update the utilization of the paddock. So if you leave it at 100%, we're going to assume that for example, the 1,500 kilos of total standing dry matter that Cibo sent us is what is being eaten by the animals. So that 100% of that paddock is being utilized. For most paddocks, that's not correct. So what you want to be doing is updating your utilization, which is a manual input in AgriWebb, takes probably 2 seconds, and you can start to put in what level of utilization of that paddock is. So for example, it could be 80% if 20% of that biomass isn't palatable, or there's some wastage or trampling around watering points, that sort of thing. That will then tell us to only take 80% of that total standing dry matter and work out the feed that's actually available based on that in AgriWebb to give you a more accurate reading.
Perfect.
So hopefully that one helps.
And feel free, to put in the chat if you have further questions around that. Let us know, or we can chat offline afterwards. The next question we had was again from Rhonda. I think this is for you, Alistair, around how do we access the total standing dry matter satellite image and it on the screen? So I'm curious, maybe just more accessing.
That might be an AgriWebb question, because I think it popped up.
Right,
I'll let Alistair share as well, because I think something that I've noticed with a lot of our AgriWebb customers that do have the Cibo integration or are thinking about it don't realize that Cibo also have a ton of incredible maps, as you saw, that you also get access to. So I'll let you answer that in a second, Al. But for AgriWebb itself, if you're on the mobile app, you should see there'll be a top black bar across the top of your map, and there's a little settings cog, and you can tap on that to change your map view to the feed on offer or the grazing days remaining, depending on your plan type. So that should give you those beautiful, hopefully bright green paddocks all across your farm. That's for the mobile app. If you're on the computer, on the map section, there's also an insights button as well. So that will change the visualization of the map from the colors of the paddocks to the feed on offer. But Alistair, I'm also very interested in understanding on Cibo's side how people can access all those different maps that you showed us.
Thanks, Isabel. So Rhonda, you should, as a Cibo, if you have a Cibo subscription, so Pasture Key, then you should be able to access that. We would have sent you some activation links, and we would have talked to you, we would have onboarded you about that. So our customer support team would have talked to you about where that data sits. Most people are actually going to be able to access their data through their Cibo Labs dashboard, so cibolabs.com.au. Once you've signed into that, you'll see your dashboard comes up. A lot of people have already created their Cibo dashboard. They have their Australian feed-based monitor sitting there, and then underneath that will be their pasture key subscription. You'll see beside your pasture key subscription a little link, a little folder that says data. When you click on that, it's going to open your data file. You'll be able to see your maps. You'll be able to see the CSV files that actually allow you to see those individual layers, but also the collection of data for your entire paddocks from when your system started running through to now. So if you've been running a system with us for a couple of years, there's going to be a lot of data there on your paddocks over time. If you've just recently started, obviously you'll have less data within that system, but you'll be able to see it for each paddock. So the maps are also contained within that, and it's in your Cibo Labs dashboard. If you have any dramas or you wanted to step through that again with us, you can contact us. Just contact us through support@cibolabs.com.au. So just shoot us an email or just send us something through the website, and we'll come back to you and take you back again through where your data is and how you can access it more effectively. Matt.
Well said. The next one we have is from Gary. So, and this might be more of a follow-up, but I'll lob it over. Is it possible to show us a very detailed image of the total standing dry matter to further explain the 10 meter squared resolution?
Oh.
Is that putting you on the spot?
I'm just quickly wondering, can we come back to that? Because I
Yep.
might see if I can share screens.
Yes.
If that
Okay.
works.
Yep.
So do you want to just power on with some others while I work myself out here?
Happy to do that.
Yeah.
With that, Matt, I actually also would love to share my screen because there were a couple of messages in the chat about the utilization. And also, I just want to make it clear for people how they can swap their maps around on the mobile app, if that's okay.
Who would you like to go with first, Matt?
Let's go with, if you're ready to go, I might let you share your screen first and then we'll lob it over to Isabel. We love going that road.
Right.
This is great.
I will share this screen with you. Okay. So
It'll be
hopefully
grey
you
after
should
this,
be able
Matt.
to see my screen here. So
Yeah, looks good.
That looks great.
Okay, so this is the basic Cibo Labs website. And when you've created your account, you will see up here at the top where it says your farms. These are the actual Australian feed-based monitor farms, which are now freely accessible to you across the country. Underneath these are your pasture key assessments. What I'll try and show you to answer your question so that you can see the difference in terms of the Australian feed-based monitor, what we get when we click on this is you get, if you like, quite a lot of pixelation, and I'll just zoom that out a little bit more. Each of these squares is basically 1 hectare. These are not paddocks. These are actually land parcels that are associated with this particular farm. Each of these you'll see is 1 hectare, and we're looking at the total standing dry matter or the average TSDM within that hectare for each of those land parcels. We can go back, and because the AFM works on a 30-day rolling average, if we go back, we can start to look at that difference in TSDM available over that period of time. We also, as I noted before, provide you with charts that will allow you to see the variation that occurs across the seasons and from month to month, year to year since the service started. So that is, if you like, that coarser detail, that whole of farm detail. The question then you had, and if we go then to this farm and look at it in a pasture key scenario, we've got these multiple layers here, and I'll take you down into our total standing dry matter. That would be right. We had cloud over there the other day, so that's not going to work for me. I would have to then dive into the data folder, which you see hiding in here, to go back and look for the most recent update. So 2 days ago was when we last had it. So I would go back to the TSDM folder here to look at this particular file, to go back to when, and my internet is going to be very slow while it loads its way up. so work with me for a second, but you can go back to find your most recent update. If I go to a different property to look at, just to show you that familiarity, this is a one that should not be covered with clouds, being a little bit further north than where that example was. When you see, if I zoom that in, we're familiar with that, you'll see that we've got that 10 square meter resolution. So within that particular paddock, you can start to pick up the variation that is occurring across that paddock. We can then provide with you that paddock, the total standing dry matter, which is the average across that location, multiplied by the area of the paddock to give us our food on offer. That's effectively what we're sending to AgriWebb. When you go back into your dashboard, you can access that data through those folders, through that folder there, Rhonda. So again, you've got your access through there, and you'll see that when we provide you with this data, it will be fairly comprehensive because we have all of the paddocks down on this side, the area that we're recording, and then we've got the history of that since that service has been operating. So the data is quite powerful, and there's quite a lot there which you can add into that system. We're very happy to talk to you afterwards about setting up either service. So rather than spend a lot of time there, I might throw it back now to you, Isabel, with your question.
Thank you. And screen. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, good. I'm always worried when I connect to my phone. So this is my AgriWebb app. And as I said before, we have that black bar across the top and then the little settings cog. So we want to tap on that and we have our default map down here and we can change this. So if you're on our performance plan, you should see that there are other map insights that you can see. So the one that you've been seeing throughout the presentation was the feed on offer map insight. And so what it does is it changes your map with a grading system of different colors based on the feed on offer records you have in AgriWebb. And it will show, a colored system of how much feed is in that paddock, so you can start to visualize it. With the utilization record, which Cole and Luke asked about, so the utilization record will only work if you have Cibo Labs integrated. So if the integration isn't turned on, the utilization won't work in AgriWebb. So once it is turned on, you can see here I have my total standing dry matter that was sent to me last week from Cibo. So I have 688 kilos of dry matter per acre on this demo farm. And I have my utilization at 100%, which may not be correct at all. So what I'm going to do is head down and hit the paddock record down the bottom. And I have my forage utilization record in the middle there. So what I can do is come in and say I could do just one paddock or multiple paddocks if you know there's certain areas of your farm that all are the same species, for example, or the same palatability. So you need to reduce the utilization of that area. You can select those paddocks. And so I can go in and put that my utilization is at 80%, for example, and I can save that. And what it will do when it updates, it's probably why we shouldn't demo live. Or did I pick the wrong paddock? Say wastage is 20%. Okay, if the technology gods were looking down on me, this is probably giving Matt a heart attack because I'm demoing live and it didn't work. But the utilization would change to 80% and your feed on offer would be reduced by that 80% of the total standing dry matter again. So hopefully that explains how that works as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Isabel. And yeah, we can definitely, Luke, let the team know just to make sure that that goes through properly for you.
There we go.
Great walkthrough for sure. I know we're getting close to the end of the time, but we have a few other questions. We'll go to David, and two really specific to Cibo Labs pricing. So, Alistair, one just around how much does it cost? Is it based on individual products or multiple packages? Things like that. So I'll let you take that away.
Thank you. So David, basically for a subscription service with us with PastureKey, it works on a sliding scale on the amount of country that you're actually looking to put into the subscription. So under 1,000 hectares, it's $1,000 a year. Under 5,000 hectares, or so it's a sliding scale. Under 3,000, it's up to 1,250. It increases to a point where when you're under 50,000 hectares, so somewhere between 25,000 and 50,000 hectares, you need to be talking to us about a quote to work on that one. So our subscription is actually independent of your AgriWebb subscription. Matt might remind me whether we have deals that are associated with that at this point, but we also then bundle up our other our other workflows in terms of our pasture biomass records and our ground cover records, and there are also separate reports that you can look at. But in terms of accessing Cibo Labs, and if you're looking for the price, just in our knowledge base, which is on our website, and I saw that you looked at there before. If you look in knowledge base and just look under PastureKey, you'll find the details that are sitting there. Matt.
Fantastic. Yeah, there might be something coming shortly as far as a potential discount, but yeah, definitely still working through that one.
Sorry, I didn't want to preempt you too
No,
much.
no, it's always good to talk about. We'll maybe do one more question, or maybe we can maybe answer two really quickly. But Emma Moss had asked, is this feed on offer assuming that the animals are grazing the paddock fully or based on a radius around water points?
Okay. That's I'll take that one if I can, Isabel. So feed on offer is as I just showed you on that map. So it's basically working on the TSDM that we've assessed, and then looking at that according to the size of the property or the size of the paddock that assessment was done. So when you click on the paddock, you'll see the TSDM, which is the average, and then you'll see the feed on offer, which is then the calculation against the property size. Now, in terms of particularly, say, in our more extensive grazing environments where there are paddocks that are only grazed within a radius of a water point, what we actually do is create for you feed on offer for a buffer around a water point, so a 3-kilometre and a 5-kilometre radius, so that you can see the amount that's actually available within that grazing distance from a water point, so that we're not including those areas that are beyond what stock would normally access. So in that northern region, we've got quite a lot of properties that use it, and they've got their water points buffered out, and the FOO is created against those buffers. If that helps you, Emma.
Fantastic. And then the last one we'll get to before we'll go to the final slide, but Rhonda had asked the question, how does MLA's membership relate? I know you had mentioned that with their calculator.
Okay, so when we created the Australian Feed-Based Monitor with MLA, which was a joint $4.2 million project, which we started about 2.5 years ago, part of MLA's support was that producers who were MLA members would have free access to the AFM. Whereas consultants and third-party users and people who are not MLA members would pay a small subscription to access the service. You access the AFM through the My MLA portal, and basically what you're looking to do is to link your livestock production assurance system, your LPA, up within your MLA portal. That then gives you your pick, which we are then using when we create your AFM account to show you your map of that particular pick. So that if you're an MLA member, you were getting it for free, and we're in the process now under some changes with MLA to allow everybody to have free access to that service. So that's a development that we're quite happy to announce today.
Yeah. Yeah, too good. Awesome. I love the announcements. This is really, really awesome. what I will do then, just I know we're a bit over, but I always like to leave it to the panelists to leave the group with one final thought or one final takeaway that you'd love the audience to have. So, Alistair, since you're not muted, I might start with you, and then Isabel, I'll have you go. And then before we do that, I'll just remind everyone on this call that we will send a recording of this webinar out to everyone who registered. So want to make sure that you all are aware of that, and that should show up in the next 24 hours or so. But Alistair, I'll let you take things away with one final thought.
All right. Can I answer a question and then give you a final thought, Matt?
You could definitely answer a question. Go for
Because Luke
it.
Dunn's just slipped a question in about being whether there's an indicator for the validity of the 5-day data. That's something we've been talking about, but certainly within your Cibo data, when you go back in and look at your most recent update, there will be a validity on it in terms of how much of that particular paddock the satellite was able to see. So that validity is within that. So you can find that data within our service. So that's my response to that one. Two final thoughts. I'm going to grab two. Firstly, what we provide is really the basis for you making better decisions. Unfortunately, we're not providing you with crystal balls. We're providing you with data that you can use to go out and make more timely and accurate decisions. If we can save you the time associated with what you're doing to go out there and know that there is a certain amount of feed in the paddock, and then you can use that data to make a better decision, then we've done our job as well as we possibly can do. We can't tell you species. We can't always tell you the things that you might want to know in more specific detail, but it does give you a very confident starting point to make your budgets more efficient. The second thing is that we are in the next 6 months rolling out quite a lot of training around using our products and using them within a forage budgeting system. It's called Grazing for Growth. Our first one's in Roma next week, and then we'll be doing them in Western Australia, New South Wales, and Victoria in the first part of next year. So keep looking at Cibo Labs to see the updates that we have. And if you can come to Grazing for Growth, that would be terrific. So they're my 2 points, Matt. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, Isabel, we'll lob it over to you.
Thank you. You stole my first takeaway, Alistair, with your first point. But I think another one too is it's going to sound a bit basic, but just starting with what your knowledge is at the time. I don't think anyone has ever told me that they regretted started entering data, too soon or too early. So see what resources we have at AgriWebb, around manual feed on offers and things like that. If as you move towards using Cibo Lab, take use of both of our knowledge bases of the training that Alistair just mentioned, reaching out to our support team and just seeing that the data you're entering, continue to analyze that through the reports and just see if that helps you make a better decision again. So definitely, just making sure that you start entering data, because then you'll always have at least a little bit of time, a few years potentially, or a few months to look back on already of what data you have entered to make more confident decisions.
Oh, I couldn't have wrapped this up better myself. It just thank you so much for your thoughts and perspective and truly expertise. And Dan and Emma, sorry that we missed you as well in the Queensland time, but I mentioned a little earlier that we will be sending a recording out. So definitely would love to get your thoughts on the discussion. And if you have any questions, as Isabel said, both teams are very well equipped to guide you on your grazing journey. Alistair, just the fact that Cibo is launching such a great workshop and something that's going to be around for a while, I think is a really cool opportunity for producers to get engaged with you all. And then obviously from Isabel's standpoint, I think with her role being very much implementation and making sure people are getting the most out of their data. Again, this is what we get really excited about at AgriWebb, is it's not just giving you a platform to collect data, but it's using the insights and reporting and obviously the team that we have to get you there. So at that, we will close this conversation down. Again, thank you for everyone who joined, all the questions. We look forward to engaging you all in the near future. Have a good night.